And welcome back. This is the Morning Cafe Show. I am Shiksha Arora, and right about now we will be discussing all things health. And with me in studio, I have Jean Lukaka, who is a postpartum hemorrhage survivor, and that's a topic that we will be discussing at length today. We'll be discussing this, of course, with Daktari in-house. We have Kireki Omanwa, the president of Kenya Obstetrical and Gynecological Society. So thank you so much. Welcome to TV47. I am honored to have you on my seat today as we, completely break this down for our viewers, because it's quite a topic that is sensitive. At the same time, it's something that's common. It happens in Kenya quite a bit. We've seen very many cases of postpartum hemorrhage. So remember, if you want to be a part of this conversation, if you want to chime in, if you want to also be able to talk about this and tell us about, your experience, remember the WhatsApp number is 0793-267-279. Once again, you can talk to us on WhatsApp, 0793-267-279. That's the number that you can reach us on. Or you can call in live in studio on 0795-045-864. Have you witnessed postpartum hemorrhage? Are you a survivor? Have you seen somebody in your family go through the same? Do you have any questions regarding postpartum hemorrhage? Remember, we've got Dr. Kireki Omanwa in studio, and he will also be able to answer your questions. And of course, regarding the same topic, if there's something that you're not sure about, if you want some advice, please do call in or WhatsApp us. All right, how are you today?
Very well.
Yes, I'm very happy that you're here, as we discuss this particular topic, because I feel like it's a topic that we need to really create awareness about.
Yes.
It's something that we need to educate people about, and I'm glad that we're talking about it today. So I'll start off with you, Dr. Kireki. What exactly is postpartum hemorrhage? Maybe in layman's language, because some people don't really understand it quite well. So you can get to that.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting us to come to the studio today to talk about this topic, which is a very serious topic, and it affects a lot of women.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, some of them lose their lives because of this. So if you can go back a little bit, in the Bible, David, the writer of Psalms, in Psalms 134, verse 19, he says, "I'll praise you, O Lord, because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made." And surely women and men are fearfully and wonderfully made. Why am I saying this? Before a woman becomes pregnant, the uterus is a tiny structure,
Yes.
a tiny organ. It's about 120, 130 grams. Now, when a woman becomes pregnant, this structure is able to stretch itself and be able to accommodate one baby, sometimes two, sometimes even three babies. And apart from the babies, it will also accommodate what you call the amniotic fluid, the water that surrounds the baby, and also it will have the placenta there. And for our audience, the placenta is what connects the mother to the baby. Okay. It's through the placenta that the baby gets nutrition and gets oxygen, which passes through the cord and gets to the baby. And some of the waste products from the baby also pass in the reverse direction and go into the mother's circulation and out of the body. Okay. Now, normally, when a woman delivers, whether it is natural vaginal delivery or even a cesarean section, what happens is that after delivery, the placenta has to come out. And because of that, there will be a little bit of bleeding. Okay. When you talk a little bit of bleeding, we are talking about 150, maybe 200 milliliters of blood.
Yes.
And once that has happened, the womb or the uterus will contract and the bleeding will stop.
Okay.
Now, when we talk about postpartum hemorrhage, is that after the delivery, the bleeding will be more than what we expect as a norm. That is more than 500 milliliters if it is a normal delivery, and more than 1,000 milliliters if it is a cesarean section. Ideally, we don't even want to go to 1,000 milliliters in a cesarean section. But remember, cesarean section is major surgery,
yes,
and there's a lot of cutting, and you'll go through vessels and so on. So the bleeding is a little bit more than in the normal delivery.
All right.
So that is basically postpartum hemorrhage in very basic terms. how does it affect, when you look at the numbers, what are the numbers? How do the numbers look like?
Yes.
They are not good at all. They're actually scary.
From what I've seen online, it says 1 to 5 women in every 100 women go through this. In Kenya, I'm not so sure, so maybe you can break it down for us.
Maybe if you can have a look at, unfortunately, when you go to conferences and talk about, some of these issues that affect women, we are the culprits, meaning sub-Saharan Africa and some parts of Southeastern Asia. If we look at maternal mortality deaths or maternal mortality ratios, the leading country, unfortunately, is our neighbors, South Sudan.
Okay.
With 1,000, I think it's 1,223 out of every 100,000 women that deliver.
That's a very high number.
It's a very high number. Closely, in number 2 is Chad with 1,067. Nigeria comes third, 1,043.
Okay.
Central African Republic at about 843. Somalia has about 621, and so on. And all of these countries are actually in sub-Saharan Africa. Where does Kenya rank? It doesn't do very well, unfortunately. The government tells us that our maternal mortality ratios are about 355 out of every 100,000.
Okay.
But when you talk to international organizations like WHO, UNFPA, UNICEF, and so on, they give our numbers at around 550. I would sort of tend to agree with this 550 simply because most of the time these deaths that occur, either they can occur at home, they can occur in private health centers. Some of them
Are not recorded.
And so these numbers, I think they are towards that 550.
Okay.
Now, these 550 are maternal deaths during pregnancy, delivery, or soon after delivery, up to 6 weeks after delivery. 40% to 45% of these deaths are actually caused by postpartum hemorrhage. So a huge number. Let's look at it this way. If today a Kenya Airways flight taking off from JKIA had issues. Let's say it has 300 passengers on board.
Yes.
Let's say it's going to New York, one of those flights. And then something happened to that flight. And unfortunately, let's say it collided with something and it had an accident and all the passengers died. You know what would happen? TV47 would be there actually trying to find out exactly what happened. All the news were, houses would be there.
Because of the accident.
Because of the accident.
Yes.
What would the government do? It would bring together a commission of inquiry the same day or even the following day.
Yes.
Or soon afterwards. And it would bring all the experts on the table to try and find out what really happened to this flight. Did it take off well? And so on. All the technical bits. And a report would come at the end of it to do what? To mitigate future accidents like those ones. But here we are losing 5,500 women every year, and we don't care about it. Nobody says anything about it, and it's just one of those things. And I think this is the sad tragedy that we are facing.
All right. With us, we also have Jean, and Jean is a survivor of PPH, that is postpartum hemorrhage. Now, Jean, I'm so sorry that you went through this, and maybe you can tell us about your ordeal and what exactly you went through. Maybe you can start off by when it started and how long before now it officially stopped and what you did to actually make it stop, the bleeding, that is.
Okay. So I'm Jean Lukaka, an entrepreneur and a mother of 3. This happened with my second child in April 16th, 2019. It was in a big hospital, thanks to God. And I had my doctor in, but I hadn't really, it was, how do you go about it? He's a resident doctor in the hospital. And he took me through the whole pregnancy period. And when I arrived in hospital, he was like, I've seen you, and he was on duty. So he checked the, what do we call them? The mothers that were there during the day. Then he was he was like, oh, Jean, you're still here. Let me take you through.
Okay.
So we started the induction process, which was about 10 a.m. in the morning. And it happens after they do Nini after every 6 hours,
Okay.
4 to 6 hours. So they did a repeat of the same. After that, they did another one at around 6 p.m. Then I started dilating more.
Yes.
So it was about 7 centimeters. So they were like, oh, let me wait for you, because he was done with his duty and he was leaving for home.
Okay.
But he was like, I think I should stay.
Okay.
I think some intuition just told him, you stay.
Yeah.
And he was like, I really want to see this baby that has been really taking us through a lot,
Yeah.
because during that period is when my goiter recurred.
Oh.
I have thyroid.
Okay.
So it recurred with the second pregnancy.
Okay.
So he was like, let me see you through, and I'll make sure I live here once the baby is out.
Okay.
I was like, that's perfect. Some confidence and some,
Self-relief.
self-relief, having your doctor around. It feels good. So it happened. They induced me again at 7 p.m. because the dilation was taking too much time
Okay.
at the point and was slow. So he was like, we need to really do something so that the baby comes out, so that they don't get tired inside and poop inside.
Yeah.
So let's do the IV.
Okay.
That was about 8:30 p.m. So I did it. Then shortly after, the baby came out.
Okay.
But once the baby came out, I think there was so much pressure on the baby. So I think it ruptured. When he came out,
Yeah.
he ruptured my cervix.
Oh.
So this caused the bleeding. And when this happened, he was like, oh, so you see the way the nurses are all around.
Yeah.
The doctor is there.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, you'd see when someone has panicked on their faces.
Okay.
And he was like, this is an emergency, call the theater.
Ooh. So you had to go in.
So
for
I had to
surgery.
go in for surgery when my people were there, my sisters. You see the way the kid comes out and everyone is excited. And he just took the baby, placed him on the crib, was like surgery.
Baby was normal, baby was healthy.
Baby was normal, baby was healthy. He was 3.95 kgs.
Wow, that's a big
yeah,
baby.
that's a big baby. So he was like, surgery direct.
Okay.
So during surgery, they normally call the spouse to come and sign in for surgery, just for consent and all. But this time they didn't.
Oh.
I was just wheeled into the escalator up to the surgery, to the theater. Immediately. And they left the baby there. He was like, this is my patient.
Yeah.
I need to keep her alive, because the bleeding was too much. Like they would change sheets after every 2 minutes.
What?
They were like, no, it's soiled.
Oh,
So
dear.
I had to go really fast, and they called the anesthetics, and the surgery was done. Then they were like, oh, now they can manage it. Because you see the way they do the preparation of the surgery, I think there was minimal time to do all that.
Yeah.
So they had to rush as fast as possible to just save my life. Because at the point I was turning pale, I was shivering, and I couldn't take
The loss of
anything.
blood.
Yeah, the extreme loss of blood. They're like, no, we have to, we need you alive. And he kept saying that. I really thank God to him. He's Dr. Nyiriki Micheka.
Okay.
And he was like, Jean, we need you. Can you hear me? He kept me please respond, press my hand if you can hear me.
Yeah.
And I did it, and he was like, we are saving your life.
Yeah.
You're okay, you're gonna be okay. Because now I panicked.
Yeah,
I was like,
of course.
am I okay? Is the baby okay?
Because you don't understand what's happening.
Yeah. I'm like, I just heard him cry. Is he okay? Am I okay? Actually, I felt more concerned about the baby instead of myself.
Yeah.
I was like, we need to sort you, Jean. We need to sort you. Then I was like, oh, okay.
I'm very glad, though, that you made it.
Yeah.
You're here with us and to tell the story.
Yes.
And, of course, the help of your doctor, who seems to be a very important part of this
yes.
story. And, he was the hero because he saved the day. So big shout out to the doctor who saved your life, and we appreciate that. Now, Daktari, what are some of the factors that actually make you susceptible to this postpartum hemorrhage? Are there some factors that make some women more susceptible, or is it just something that happens by chance? What are some of the things that come into play when the chances of this postpartum hemorrhage are either increased or decreased in specific cases?
Thank you. First of all, congratulations to Dr. Micheka.
Yes.
He's my colleague, and we know each other very well. He was one of our students at the University.
Oh, he was your student?
He was our student, yes.
Wow,
So
look
we
at
did
that. So you did a good job.
We did a good
You
job.
taught him well.
Yes. Coming back to the question, are there some issues, are there some things that can make some women to be more
Like
susceptible
risk factors.
to that, risk factors? And these risk factors can actually be right from the beginning of pregnancy.
Okay.
And then others will appear later on, during the pregnancy and so on. There are some simple things, for example, like anemia. When your HB, that is the value of, or the level of blood, let me put it that way, is lower than it is supposed to be. Because what happens is that when a woman has anemia,
Right.
the clotting system doesn't work the way it is supposed to work.
Of course.
So even a normal delivery, where you're supposed to lose 100, 150 milliliters, may end up becoming a tragedy. Women who have delivered many times, what does many times mean? 4 times, 5 times, and so on, they are at risk. Why are they at risk? Because most of the time, you find that womb keeps on stretching itself. Another time it stretches, and so on. So when it comes to the time when they are delivering, you find it is not contracting the way it is supposed to contract. If a woman is carrying 2 or 3 babies, that is also a risk factor.
Okay.
Because the womb is completely stretched, and sometimes the mechanism of contraction may not be working the way it should. And if a woman is carrying a big baby, 3.95 kilos, you said? Yeah, that was a reasonably big baby.
Yeah.
The other time when I was doing my ward rounds in KNH, in the labor ward, there was a patient who had delivered, I think, 5 times. And one of the babies was 6 kilos.
6 kilos.
The smallest she had delivered was 4.2 kilos. So 6 kilos, 4.7 kilos, 4.5 kilos, 4.2 kilos was the smallest. So immediately when we are taking a history, and we have such a history of a lady delivering big babies, this is a risk factor straight away. Sometimes a pregnant woman can have too much fluid, what you call amniotic fluid, in the womb,
Yes.
what you call polyhydramnios. And this can be because of different reasons. Most of the time there is no real cause, but sometimes you may have that the baby has a problem with the swallowing mechanism. Remember, the fluid that surrounds the baby is what the baby swallows and urinates at the same time. And it's a very good indicator of what is happening with the baby. If the amount of fluid is okay, we know that the digestive system is okay, and we know that the urinary system is also okay. The kidneys are functioning well, and so on. So sometimes if there is a problem with the digestive system, then the amount of fluid will be a lot.
Okay.
So when it is a lot, of course, it exerts a lot of pressure on the uterus. And when the baby has come out, again, because of the overstretching of the uterus, the mechanism of contraction may actually be hampered. So it will lead to postpartum hemorrhage. Fibroids, which are growths in the womb.
Yes.
And 30 to about even 50 to 60% of women of African origin will have fibroids sometime in their reproductive period.
Okay.
Now, again, it depends on the size of the fibroids. Sometimes they are small, but if they are big, then these fibroids will actually hamper that mechanism of contraction and so on. So these are some of the things that we look at. So when a patient comes for that ANC visit, the first visit, a very comprehensive history is important, such that we know how many times have you delivered, what were the weights of the baby, did you deliver normally, were there any complications, so that we can stratify these women who may end up having these complications. We want to actually follow them up very, very keenly. And then there are other issues as well, which can be contributory, not directly. For example, what you call preeclampsia, where the patient's blood pressure increases, especially from the second trimester, from around 20 weeks. Sometimes it can start a little bit early. So that can also be contributory. If it is not well controlled, blood pressure, your heart is pumping too fast. And then the vessels are also ticking too. So when he is delivering, and that blood pressure is not well controlled, it will end up to having a postpartum hemorrhage. Sometimes the placenta, normally it's supposed to be on the line of the womb, but sometimes it can penetrate the wall of the womb, what we call placenta accreta spectrum. Sometimes it goes all the way, it can even affect the bladder. So when we have such something like that, we know that this is potentially a big problem when she's going to deliver. And we normally deliver these patients by cesarean section. And even when we deliver these patients with cesarean section, these are patients who are supposed to be delivered by the most experienced obstetricians. So you can't just say, naenda kufanya caesar. It is not a caesar. It is serious surgery. And actually, unfortunately, women lose their lives because of that laissez-faire attitude to cesarean section. And sometimes that placenta, the situation of the placenta can be in such a way that in a place it's not supposed to be. Normally it's supposed to be on what you call the anterior wall, that is the or the posterior wall, the back of the womb, or it can be at the fundus. But when it comes and covers the passage or the exit of the baby, we call that placenta previa. And that can also lead to bleeding, and especially when the patient starts having some spotting, some bleeding, and we've already done a scan and we know that it's placenta previa, that is also something which contributes to placenta previa and deaths of our patients as well.
All right. Now, Jean, before you went through this yourself personally, did you have any information about postpartum hemorrhage? Had you heard about it? Had you done some research? Did you know of any other women who had gone through the same during your pregnancy?
Yes, I did. I did community health.
Okay.
So I
obviously
covered
studied it. Yes.
Maternal health. So I was aware of it before. And again, we had a family friend who lost her life while she delivered. Then she passed on, but the baby survived.
Okay, wow.
Yeah,
so sorry about that.
When that happened, I think I was in panic mode.
Because you already knew what had happened.
I already knew what had happened.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was aware.
All right. Dr. When it comes to some of the preventative measures that doctors can take to prevent this from happening, maybe you can take us through that as well and tell us what are some of the things that doctors need to be doing just to take that precaution to avoid cases of postpartum hemorrhage.
Thank you. In any situation, I think it's always too good to be proactive.
Absolutely.
Than to be now, when things are happening, is when you start, jumping
prevention
up and down.
is better than treatment.
It's better than cure, it's better than treatment. So that history is very important. Big babies, that is a red flag.
Yes.
You have fibroids, is a red flag. Anemia is a red flag, and so on and so forth.
Just be prepared.
Be prepared. So that information, as they say, information is power. Once we have that information, it helps us to plan and to help these women.
Right.
So when this patient comes to labor ward, just like you, for example, if you were to be pregnant again and you've had a history of postpartum hemorrhage, there is a tendency that you may have it again.
Yeah.
So we will have to be very careful. So what are some of these measures that we do? Take the history, number one. Number two, because we don't want to start jumping up and down when it has happened, we normally advise that the patient has what you call to cannula, the tubes that we use to give fluids and so on into the system. So we have 2 of them. As we are doing that, we take blood as well for what we call grouping and cross-matching, such that we know that in case something were to happen,
you already have some blood
there is blood that is waiting, and blood is very, very important.
Yes.
Now, if you have delivered your babies, vaginally, all of them, then what we want to do, we want to shorten what is called the 3rd stage of labor. As soon as the baby has come out, we want to give a medication which is going to make the uterus contract quickly, and then gently we pull the cord. As we are doing that, the placenta will come out, and remember we have given her medication, so once the placenta is out, the vessels which were open will contract and will close because of the medication that we had given.
Yeah.
And of course, be prepared. There is what we call a study which was done recently, and some of our colleagues from the department, Professor Qureshi, Dr. Guako, Professor Osoti, actually took part in this. And we call it the emotive study. What it did, it looked at over 200,000 women who delivered in different countries. It was in Kenya, I think in Tanzania, and I think in Nigeria. What they discovered is that there are some simple things that we can also do as doctors. There are what we call drapes that can be used. And these drapes are given to are used in women who are delivering vaginally, and they are put just below their buttocks, such that we can be able to assess very, very quickly how much blood this patient has lost. So in the absence of these drapes, then it becomes a challenge.
Because you don't really know.
Yes, our eyes, is very subjective when we are assessing. And you remember, if a drop of blood landed on, let's say, a white piece of cloth, it will spread very quickly.
Absolutely.
So you may not actually be very sure about how much blood this patient has lost. So in such cases, for every woman who is delivering, we actually should have these drapes so that it helps us. And by the way, when they did the study, the conclusion was that these drapes help in identifying, and by identifying the women who potentially are having a postpartum hemorrhage, it helped to reduce the cases by about 60%.
Wow.
So it is something very simple, something which should be available in every labor room. Are they available in every labor room? No, they are not available. But that's a different story also. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Jean, you said that this happened to you on your second child, right?
Yeah.
Second childbirth, but you went on to have a third child as well.
Yes.
Was that normal for you? Were you ever anxious, and how did it affect you emotionally, psychologically? I can imagine the repercussions on your mental health as well, because you're living in fear that what if this happens again? You're always in that panic mode. So what's some of the long terms of this PPH, the postpartum hemorrhage that you experienced in your second child, and how it affected you during your third child delivery?
So this really affected me because on realizing I'm expecting another child, past the trauma of what I went through, I was like asking my doctor.
And how far apart were they?
3 years.
3 years, okay.
Yes. So I'm like telling my doctor, I don't think I really want to keep a child again because of issues, what I went through. And he was like, you know what, Jean, because I talked to another doctor who was taking me through, called Dr. Miskela, Dennis Miskela. So he was like, no, what if this is the girl you've been looking for? Because I have 2 boys. Okay. And I was like, no, I don't think so.
And was she a girl?
Yes, she's a girl.
Look at that.
And he was like, no, we're not removing this. This could be the girl you've been looking for.
Yeah.
And you're married, your husband is there, he's supportive, and we are here for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you go through it well. Then I was like, okay, let's do it. And I kept the pregnancy. And once I started laboring, I was like, this time round, I'm not going to hospital early.
Okay.
Like the previous time I went to hospital because the baby was big, so we needed him out. So this time I was like, no, I'm not going to hospital early. Actually, I had deliveries on that day. So I cooked, I did all my deliveries.
Wow, look at that.
Yes, while laboring, and my friend came over and my husband were like, oh, this girl is not going to hospital and she's gonna give birth here. And when I went to hospital, I got to hospital at 11:42.
Okay.
By 11, I got to the emergency room at 11:42. 11:45, the baby was out.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah. And the doctor was like, what do you mean? I mean, I'm upstairs. I couldn't come down and receive this girl. What do you mean? I'm like, where were you all this time? I'm like, I was in the house and I was scared of the whole labor process. The trauma of having gone through, you can imagine being in hospital, you're seeing people giving birth, you're there the whole day, you're like, what's happening to me?
Yes.
I'm doing all I need to do, like walking up and down the stairs, doing exercises, taking hot water with glucose to give me energy. I'm like, things are not working. This time round, it's different. I'm gonna go in there when the baby is close by, and that's what happened. And yeah, we got a baby.
Amazing.
Yeah, but and it did. I think it had I had a little tear, but the baby was small.
Okay.
Yeah, the baby was smaller than the other one.
So
it was
all good.
All good.
Wow, look at that story. Huh?
So you delivered after 3 minutes.
Imagine.
11:42, 7:45. It's a baby.
What a blessing.
Yeah.
We love to hear success stories here.
Yeah.
Daktari, when you hear of such cases, right, and you do know the mental turmoil that comes with postpartum hemorrhage, and then of course now the fear in the next child, sometimes it makes women very against having another baby.
Correct.
How exactly would you deal with such situations where now women have gone through psychological turmoil, they don't really know what they want, they're in panic mode, they're always now confused about what comes next, what happens, what if? There's always that if.
Yeah.
How would you like to manage that situation, and what would you like to tell such patients?
I'm glad you met Dr. Miskela.
Yeah.
Also, I think we are doing a good job at the
Was she
University of
also your
Nairobi.
student?
He was also.
Was he also your student?
He was also our student.
Another one?
Yeah.
Wow, 2 doctors. Look at that.
So we are doing a good job. Now, we know that the effects of PPH can actually take a long time. And it has also been proven that when mother dies, the effect of that death
Yes.
actually continues reverberating to the second, even the third generation.
It extends beyond the death of
Yes.
the individual.
Absolutely.
The family, the
Yes.
baby itself.
Especially the babies.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is that for us men, once something like that has happened, you'll find that we are completely lost when it comes to taking care of children. We don't know how to take care of them.
Yes.
So what we do most probably, you'd find that maybe after a short while, a year or so, you get married and life goes on.
Yeah.
Life will go on for this man, but it will not go on for these children.
The child.
Yeah, I have a good friend of mine
Yeah.
who lost his mother, again due to PPH,
Wow.
when he was 15 years old.
Oh.
And
When he was 15.
when he was 15.
So I'm guessing the mom got pregnant again.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So you would think that around 15, you are sort of settled, or you are starting to settle in life, you know a few things and so on. But after a year, the father got married and life continued.
Wow.
For the father and this new family.
Yes.
For this gentleman, my good friend, unfortunately, life never continued as it would have continued. He struggled through school, he struggled through university, and even now, when I mentioned that we are having something like this, he said, "I'm going to run." Definitely. And then the interesting thing
Is he a doctor?
No, he's not.
Okay.
He's a historian. And he said, by the way, 6th of October is my mother's birthday. So he's going to run in remembrance of his mother. And he said that the loss of his mother actually has affected the whole of his life.
Yes, I
that
can
even
imagine.
now he's a grown-up, he has children who are mature, but he still feels that loss of
The
his-
void is still there.
The void is still there.
Wow.
Now, for ladies who've had near misses, for example, like you, sometimes it becomes a challenge to overcome that trauma that you went through. But I'm glad that we met a doctor who listened to your fears, who listened to what you are afraid of, and then supported you and said, "We are going to walk with you." And who knows, this may be that girl that you've been looking for. And it ended up being that girl. So I think the support is very, very important.
Absolutely.
Support from your husband, support from the community, support from the family, and more importantly, support from the healthcare workers, whether it is the midwives, whether it's the doctors, and so on. So when we come together and give you this support, it will help you overcome these barriers, the trauma, the pain, and so on that you could have, that you went through, and which you can actually be a barrier for you to have another baby. Because the trauma is horrible, because every time you think, I have a baby at home and God knows I get pregnant and something like this happens and then I end up dying.
Yes.
So what is the point?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Let me stay with this one that I'm.
Yes.
This one that
One
I
is
have.
enough.
And again, for us men, we don't understand. We said, me nataka watoto watano.
And there's always sometimes friction.
You know, it might
the
cause
family.
so much friction, yeah.
Yes,
'Cause
yes.
you know, also, it comes also with like the external
Pressure
part
from
of
the
the
extended
external.
families.
And they
Yes.
don't understand
Friends.
what you went
Yes,
through, and
yeah.
it's just
And then you know what you end up doing quietly. You end up inserting, unakuja kwa daktari and say, daktari niweke ile kitu.
And then you just tell your husband,
so
I can't get pregnant.
I can't get pregnant. And then you come with your husband, they say, something is wrong with my wife. Meanwhile, she's just looking at him quietly.
I mean, it happens.
It happens,
It's not just in the movies.
It
It's actually happening.
It is real life. And then at the end of the day, you say, nilikuambia,
Yeah.
but I can't have
Yeah.
a baby. We have a problem. So we start looking for the reasons of pregnancy,
Yeah.
of infertility. And then you say, daktari, quietly, mimi niliokewa ile kitu.
Yeah. Jean,
So-
do you think there's enough education and awareness regarding postpartum hemorrhage? Because, you know, you as a survivor, you as somebody who has gone through this, it's very important for you to share your voice and to be able to spread your story so that people can understand and also learn from it, right? So I'm glad that you're here. But do you think for you personally, if you are not a clinical officer, right? You said that you are a health officer, and this is something that you are well aware about because you've learned about it. But what if you weren't, right? And what if you didn't have a family member or someone that you knew who had gone through the same? Would you have known about this?
No. No.
Yeah.
I don't think so. And actually, I've realized it's not so commonly spoken about more often as the other things are. Because I was just telling him earlier on, we're in some group called Super Mamas, where moms are. And when we throw, like, one of the leader threw it at us, is like, how many of you guys have gone through postpartum hemorrhage and all that? Are you willing to share your story? And most of them were like, oh, it's been 10 years, I've not healed. It's been 7 years.
Wow.
The trauma is like, it feels like it was yesterday. And it's not so spoken about. I think it's really suppressed, and people need to come out and just share their stories so that maybe they can find an alternative, maybe do like mental awareness of the same, and just,
And Dr. what exactly is the Ministry of Health doing when it comes to spreading this awareness and also contributing to be able to make sure that this particular situation that a lot of women go through, this particular condition that women have gone through, and it has caused almost, you said, 300 according to the government. 355 deaths in a year, right? And is this something that they really need to put more energy into and more focus into so that they're able to amplify the voice and create awareness regarding postpartum hemorrhage? And what needs to be done really?
Absolutely. Maybe I can go back a little bit, if you don't mind, and give a little story, and then maybe I can use that as an illustration. I was in one of those hospitals, a private hospital, and I had finished an operation and I was going to change. And then my colleague comes running and says, there's severe PPH in theater 3 or theater 4. So it's an emergency. So I run to theater 3, theater 4, and I find my colleague really struggling. And when I asked her the story, he said, a young lady, 31 years old, she had come at term, she had delivered a beautiful baby girl, 3.1 kilos. So not a big baby. No tears, nothing. And then all of a sudden, she had started bleeding.
So the baby is out, all is good?
The baby's out, everything is okay. And here she is bleeding like a tap. So, you know, she's struggling. There's what we call abdominal pack, which we use in surgery. You know, she'd put inside there to sort of stop the bleeding. And after 2 minutes, you'll be completely soaked. Have to remove it. So 2 heads are better than one. So I asked her, can I have a look? Because fresh eyes. So I look, I don't see anything. I don't see the reason why this lady is bleeding so
There's no
profusely.
tears.
There are no tears. There was a small laceration in the vagina, which she had put 1 stitch, and it was not bleeding. The uterus is contracted, but it's still bleeding. So in my mind, I was thinking now, what could be the reason? Say, let me just examine her. So I put my hand inside the vagina, and in which the uterus, I felt as if there was something at the back wall of the uterus. So in my mind, my assessment, I thought most probably this could have been a fibroid, and the placenta was lying on the fibroid. Now that the placenta had come out, the vessels were open, and there was no contraction. So the vessels were open and they were pouring. So we put in abdominal pack after abdominal pack, and meanwhile you can hear the blood pressure dropping because of the amount of blood that she's using. So I asked the anesthetist, my colleague, have you given this medication? He said, we've given all manner of medications to contract the uterus, but she's still pouring. Do we have what you call a uterine balloon tamponade? Because you can insert it so that it stops the bleeding.
Yes.
Say there is no uterine balloon tamponade. So here you are stuck. She's bleeding profusely, been given all the medications. Something, a commodity that can help in the stopping of the blood is not there. So we have to improvise. So I asked for what you call a urinary bladder catheter, called a Foley's catheter. We normally insert it inside the bladder when you are operating.
Right.
Said, I got it, but we need something else to improvise this urinary balloon tamponade. What do we need? We need a condom. So I asked, can I get a condom? And everybody went quiet in theater. Said, can somebody go and look for a condom?
Yes.
And then one of the nurses sauntered out, and then after a few minutes came back and said, I want to say that this condom was not in my bag. I said, we don't care.
At this point, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter where it was. So we took that condom, we inserted the catheter inside the condom and tied it, and we inserted this inside the womb, pumped in normal saline.
Okay.
And when you got to around 200, 250, the bleeding stopped.
Wow.
And it was like, wow.
What a relief.
Everybody was quiet. So we, just to make sure that everything was okay, we put in another abdominal pack to make sure that there'll be no bleeding.
Yeah.
And she was taken to ICU.
Okay.
Now, when she came in to deliver, her HB, that is her blood level, was about 11.
Okay.
When she went to ICU, her blood level had dropped to 3.1.
Wow.
So she had lost
a lot of
blood. Now, what saved this woman? Several things. I would call them pillars. Number one, there was human resource, personnel. There were 2 consultants, obstetricians,
Yes.
and there was a consultant anesthetist. Number 2, there were medications, good quality medications. Sometimes, unfortunately, in that study that I mentioned earlier on, it was discovered that some of the medications that we do have is actually poor quality medication.
Okay.
It says in this vial is supposed to be 10 units, for example, but when you check it, it's maybe 3 units. So you give a patient this medication, hoping that it will work, and it doesn't work. So there was proper medication. We had blood, and a lot of it. So imagine HB dropping from 11 to 3, she lost a lot of blood.
Wow.
So we had about 2 liters. So she got blood, which replenished whatever she had lost. There was an ICU unit, which was functional. And there were personnel in that ICU unit who knew how to take care of this patient. And then, of course, commodities, that catheter which we used to improvise, and so on. If any of these pillars is absent, we will lose women.
Okay.
If we have medications, we have blood, we have all this, but you don't have no personnel, you are going to lose them. We have personnel, you have medications, you have blood, we are going to lose women. And blood is one of the biggest problems that we have in this country. We collect about 276,000 units or bags of blood. And 70% of this blood is used by women who are delivering, who have postpartum hemorrhage. And this 276,000 is actually not even enough, because it's about 60% of what we need as a country. Is the Ministry of Health doing enough? I think it's doing quite a bit, and a lot more can be done. For example, just creating awareness is something very important. When we know that a mother can lose her life because of lack of blood, it will encourage the population, the Kenyans, to go out and donate more blood. If there are issues, for example, with ICU, for example, then because we have MCAs, we have ministers and so on, we can actually go to our local hospitals and say, look, this is what we need because our mothers are dying. And I'm sure the people who make the decisions, the governors, the ministers, and so on, are watching this program, or they will watch it. And they need to know that this is something that is affecting our people and needs to be sorted out. So yes, a lot is being done, but a lot more is should be done. And then the other thing is that, remember, we have 47 counties, and each of these counties has its own health system.
Yes.
We need to come together and look at what are those priorities in these counties. Losing one mother should be a priority for all the counties.
Absolutely.
So wherever one mother dies, actually this should be the highest priority.
Okay, interesting. Thank you so much for that explanation. Now, Jean, when we talk about resources, when we talk about what could be done, as a survivor, what do you think needs to be done? What kind of information would you want to be passed on to the public? What do you think the Ministry of Health is lacking in the sense in spreading awareness and just talking about this? And how could it be better? Personally, maybe this is something that you would like to say as Jean, just so that if somebody is watching from the government, they know that you're a survivor and this could have been done better.
Yeah, I think what could be done better is, you see, the same facilities being offered and the same care that and resources given to a private hospital,
yes,
should be the same that is being given to a public hospital like Mama Lucy, Kenyatta. And
let me cut you short.
Yeah.
How much did you pay what was your cost for the entire treatment, for the surgery that you went through? Because I know it's private.
Yeah, it was 150,000.
Wow, 150,000 for that surgery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they had to bring in, it's a whole lot, the anesthetic,
Yeah, it's a team,
the
yeah.
pediatrician.
And you were in a private hospital, right?
Yes.
One of the biggest hospitals.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now imagine if this was the scenario where there was a public hospital. I don't think somebody would have been able to afford that who goes to a public hospital.
Yes.
So would they have gotten the same attention that you got because your doctor actually stayed back?
No.
There must be cases where this happens, obviously.
Yes.
There are some really good doctors in public hospitals, but in terms of resources, in terms of, the personnel, sometimes things are lacking here and there. In terms of anesthesia even, we have some lacking.
Yeah, because I believe like it was very minimal time used for me to get me out of the delivery room to the theater.
Absolutely.
In my mind, I'm like, in most of these hospitals, the theaters are not functioning.
Yeah.
And either it's not functioning or it's not stocked up or the doctor is not there, maybe sometimes. So
especially even in rural areas.
Yeah.
We have this issue in rural areas which we'll address later on as well. But yes, go on.
So you can imagine having to get an ambulance to move you from point A to point B. Like my incident was so much because I lost so much blood. So it was like a snap. If that couldn't have happened, I mean, we are going up the stairs and by the time I'm getting up to the theater, I'm shivering and I'm turning pale.
Yeah.
You can imagine the time duration. It's about 5 to 10 minutes. What if we had to wait like for these days ambulances take so much time to come.
If it is available?
If it's available.
Or it may be available and there is no fuel.
And there's no fuel or the driver is not there.
Or the driver is not there.
Yeah, or the distance from this hospital to a major hospital could be, I mean, time, when you have postpartum hemorrhage, time is of essence.
Absolutely.
Completely.
Yeah.
So we would, I'd urge the government to facilitate the public hospitals for those who can't afford the private hospitals.
Okay.
Just to have the same experience these other people are getting and just functionalities in the hospitals. Yeah, and just being there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very important. Right, Daktari, there's a message that's coming on WhatsApp. Remember, you can also be a part of this conversation. If there's any questions that you have, please feel free to chime in on 0793 267 279. We're almost done with this session, but yes, you can still get those last-minute questions in. You can call in live on 0795 045 864 if you have any any questions rather, regarding this conversation that we've been having in studio when it comes to postpartum hemorrhage, and if you've had somebody in your family or you personally have gone through it. So any questions regarding this very sensitive topic, please do let us know. So yes, on WhatsApp, a message has come in that says, when is it okay to use family planning pills after giving birth? It's my 3rd week of postpartum. Obviously, this is unrelated to postpartum hemorrhage. Just a question for you, Dr. Ari.
Okay, thank you very much. When you talk about family planning, there are different methods of family planning. There are family planning methods which can be used before delivery or even after delivery.
Okay.
I think the specific question is about pills.
Yes.
And what pills.
Yes. And how long?
And how long.
After.
There are 2 types of pills that can be used. They are what we call combined oral contraceptive pills.
Okay.
And then there's what we call the mini pill.
Yeah.
The combined oral contraceptive pills should not be used postpartum, especially if the woman is breastfeeding. Why? Because they have 2 hormones, that is estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen can get into the blood, into the milk of the woman, and the baby can actually imbibe in estrogen, which is not a good thing.
Okay.
So if she were to use
And this is for all cases, yeah?
This is for all cases.
Regarding if you have any postpartum hemorrhage or normal delivery or C-section.
So long as you're breastfeeding, combined oral contraceptive pills, out for you.
All right.
The only pills that you can use is that mini pill, what you call a mini pill. It only has progesterone, and progesterone can be used as soon as the patient wants. And that one, the only thing is that with progesterone, with that mini pill, it is a very time sensitive, if I can put it that way. If you decide that you're going to take it at 8 o'clock, it has to be 8 o'clock. Not 10 o'clock.
Oh, so it has to be very time specific.
Very, very, very time sensitive.
Okay.
So for her, if she wants to use the pill, then it's only that mini pill that she can use.
Okay.
And how long she can use it? She can use it as long as she wants.
Okay.
There's no really time frame.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ari. Now, Dr. Ari, let's just, as we wind up, I would like for you to talk about, home births. I feel like this is something that's a gray area, especially when medicine is concerned. Medical doctors are concerned because they don't encourage it. But like, if you're in a rural area and in the case there's an emergency and you have to give birth at home and postpartum hemorrhage happens, what happens in this situation?
A tragedy.
Yes.
It is a tragedy. And I think that is why the government has encouraged all women to try and deliver in health facilities. Simply because at home, if something were to happen, then obviously, exactly what you said, the distance from home to the hospital or to the nearest health facilities, and most of the time you may get is a level 2 hospital where there is actually nothing basically there, which can help in such an emergency. So getting from home to a level 4 hospital, for example, which has a theater, which has staff, which has medications, which has blood, and so on and so forth, can be a challenge. So that is why it is important that when our women get pregnant, let them get into the health system such that we know how to help them. Of course, we still don't have 100% hospital deliveries, but we are almost getting there.
Okay.
And then the other thing, there is, when you talk about home deliveries, for those ladies who are, I don't want to say well off, but are well off, some of them actually decide that, no, I want to deliver at home in a well-known environment because I feel safe and so on. It is okay.
But have a medical personnel.
It is okay. Have a medical personnel, number one. We have to be sure that this pregnancy is low risk.
Okay.
Number two. And then,
based on the history.
Based on the history.
Yes.
And then number three, what is the strategy of moving mitigation plan? If something were to happen, how do we move this patient who is delivering or is bleeding in the next 4 or 5 minutes to a hospital where she can be saved? So it may sound nice and posh that I can deliver at home and everything is fine, it's a known environment, but it can also be a trap.
Okay.
God forbid that you are delivering and it's 5 o'clock or 5:30 and there is a traffic jam in Nairobi.
Yeah.
Utakufa, by the way. So we have to be careful about that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate your presence, and I think we've really just delved deep into this particular condition, which is known as postpartum hemorrhage, which a lot of women go through, and it's something that is less spoken of here in Kenya, and I'm glad that we actually got to sit down and have a conversation about this. So asante sana, Dr. Kireki Omanwa, President of Kenya Obstetrical and Gynecological Society. Very nice to see that both your doctors were actually his students.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is amazing. You're doing a good job, so we commend you for that and keep it up. Thank you so much for being here. And Jean, by the way, Jean Lukaka, I beg your pardon, Jean Lukaka, who is a PPH survivor as well. That's postpartum hemorrhage survivor. So we are very inspired by your story and your strength that you've exhibited, and of course we're sorry that you had to go through it, but also at the same time, on the flip side, we're happy that you came here to talk about it, because we need more people like her to be able to be open and just you know, when it comes to advocacy, we need people like you who have been through this experience to be able to talk to other women who could possibly go through the same and tell them that, you know what, there's hope. It's not the end of the world. And at the end of the day, I made it, so you know, you could also make it. But what needs to happen between the situation where it actually ends up happening, where you end up getting postpartum hemorrhage, and now after, you know, this emotional, psychological stress that you go through. So yeah, we really did have someone, I think, who got very deep and of course very honest with us. So we appreciate you, Jean, as well. And thank you for watching. I really appreciate your presence. If you have been watching, I'm sure you learned a thing or two. If you're a man, I'm sure you learned something for your wife, your partner, your sister, you know, your mom as well. So I'm glad that you could also be here to be a part of this very wholesome discussion right here on TV 47. You are watching the Morning Cafe show. This happens every Wednesday. Remember, we talk about relationships, and today we talked about health, but next week, same time, same place, we'll be talking about yet another interesting topic. Don't go anywhere, because coming up next, we've got Stan, and he is going to be with Executive Chef David, that is from Olive Gardens Hotel. And today, Stan is going to be making nachos with tortilla chips, raising